Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Indah Handayani. I'm from the English Language Study Program Class A in 2024 with ID number 2402110015. Now I'm gonna read the text with the title English Teacher Strategies in Managing Large Classes, a Case Study. This study aimed at finding English teacher strategies in managing large classes and students' perception towards their English teacher strategies. The design of this research is qualitative with a case study approach. This study involved 4 English teachers and 10 students at one state madrasah sanawiyah in Palembang, Indonesia. The data were collected through observation, interviews, and document review. Thematic analysis was conducted across a data set. The findings demonstrate that planning the lesson, organizing and controlling the students, managing classroom communication and talking time, then giving written and timely feedback on students' work were the strategies applied by the English teachers. The use of these strategies was positively perceived by the students that they could have a better understanding, practice mutual respect, and enjoy the lesson. Therefore, it might be a good idea to review teacher strategies in this study to address the difficulty of teaching English in large class settings. English play very important roles in many fields of human life. It can be used in education and business to get information, job, and entertainment. Richard also added that English may be required for social survival and employment for new immigrants in English-speaking countries, an essential tool for education and business for some learners, the language of travel and related activities of sightseeing for others, and a popular language for the media, entertainment, the internet, and other forms of electronic communication. It can be concluded that English holds prominent function in many aspects of human life. Learning English is essential for today's generation to adapt to global communication, literature, media, and work in the present and future. Therefore, in Indonesia, English is included as a subject in the school curriculum. This is supported by Lee, which states that English is taught and used as a foreign language in Indonesia. It is the first foreign language learned as a compulsory subject at school. To widen the student understanding of English as a foreign language, thus English is the first foreign language officially taught as a compulsory subject to students from junior secondary school in Indonesia. In teaching English as a foreign language, or EFL, teachers as the facilitators of student learning take a variety of roles within the classroom. One of the important roles of a teacher in the teaching and learning process is being a classroom manager. As a classroom manager, a teacher should have a set of skill and technique to create a positive and productive learning environment for the students. Teachers cannot successfully teach their students if they are not in control of the class. The control of students by the teacher in the classroom tends to be regarded as the goal of classroom management. In summary, effective English teaching and learning cannot take place in a poorly managed classroom. Class size is one of the influential matters in managing the classroom. Malwayong and Park argue that it can impact classroom management significantly. The size of a class may affect the teacher's classroom management. It can make and influence the success or failure of classroom management. Class size relates to the number of students in a class. It refers to the actual number of students taught by a teacher. There is no exact size for small or large class. However, according to Brown, for effective language learning, a class should have not more than 12 students. A classroom with too many students often presents some problems for the teacher, such as lack of individual teacher, students' attention, fewer opportunities for students to speak, and insufficient teachers' feedback on students' written work. In addition, large class is usually hot, crowded, and noisy. It affects the teaching process and student academic performance. It also reduces effective classroom control. To overcome the problem of a large class, teacher and need to have strategies to improve student learning achievement with optimal classroom management. Several studies investigated pedagogical strategies that teachers use in teaching in large class to create positive student-teacher interaction. Solid and Turner report that self-disclosure, caring leadership, and making the class feel smaller are the strategies to promote positive class to reduce physical and social distance and help the student in learning. In short, strategies have to be used by teachers to resolve large class management problems. The problems of large classes are also faced by the English teacher at one of the state Islamic junior high school or Madrasah Sanawiyah in Palembang. This school is also likely to have classes of large size based on our preliminary study results. A teacher had to teach 42 to 45 students in each class. It was really an overcrowded class and difficult for the teacher to control. The students were very noisy. Discomfort and lack of individual attention were the other problems in the class. However, the English teacher had their strategies to manage the classroom and make the students feel comfortable in learning. We conducted this research to know more detail about English teacher strategies in managing a large class and students' perception of the strategies used by their English teacher in managing a large class and exploring the student perception toward the strategies used by their English teacher. Teaching is a way to convey knowledge to students. Teaching may be defined as a process to help students learn how to do something and understand what knowledge is given. Likewise, the work of teaching includes both cultural competence and relational scientific communication skill, and the combination of rigor and imagination fundamental to student effective practice. Thus, the student can get knowledge from the teaching process by the teacher. Teaching English is an important job. The objectives of teaching English are basically related to the cognitive and psychomotor domain, that the student can understand the English grammar, speak, read, and write English correctly. Teaching English as a foreign language requires teacher to deliver the English language articulately and interestingly to encourage students to improve their English skill through listening, speaking, reading, and writing activities. As the facilitator of student learning, a teacher takes on a variety of roles within the classroom. One of the most important roles of a teacher is being a classroom manager. Richard and Rogers 2000 explained that the teacher is responsible for determining the content of what is taught, setting the instructional patterns of classroom activities, and keeping the student organized and focused on the lesson. This indicated the important role of a teacher in determining students' success in learning. A teacher with strong classroom management can create an environment for students to learn and behave in new and different ways without distractions. The ability of teachers to organize classroom and manage the behavior of their students is critical to achieving positive educational outcomes. Effective learning can begin with the creation of an exciting learning atmosphere. Therefore, classroom management is very important. In the teaching learning process, the teacher has to give the student facilities to make the teaching learning process easy, active, and more comfortable. Management refers to skill in the organization and presentation of lessons so that all pupils are actively engaged in learning. Classroom control and classroom discipline are the most commonly used concepts to refer to classroom management during teaching. Management strategy is a way that is applied by the teacher in the classroom with various aspects and goals to get an achievement in the learning process. According to Ainsman, Eltwar, and Kuzman 2015, the management strategy is to redirect the student back to the lesson to not interrupt all student learning. By this definition, management strategy focus on the process of learning, goal setting, policy development, and planning to achieve objective. It can control the aim of learning itself. Classroom management is what teachers do to ensure that students engage in the task in hand. State that classroom management refers to the action teachers take to create an environment that is respectful, caring, orderly, and productive, and support and facilitates academic and social emotional learning. The ability of teachers to organize classroom and manage the behavior of their students is critical to achieving positive educational outcomes. Effective learning can be begin creating an excellent learning atmosphere. Therefore, classroom management is clearly very important and needs serious attention. The teacher should apply appropriate strategies to manage their classroom so that content and student learning can occur. The definition of large classes may differ in different contexts. According to UNESCO 2006, in some countries, 25 until 30 students per teacher is considered large, while in other countries, this is seen as normal or even quite small. At the same time, Brown 2001 emphasized that for language learning, a class is considered large when it has more than a dozen of students. This implies that the class occupied by more than 12 students can lead to some difficulties in dealing with individuals in the classroom. The teacher often perceives large classes as troublesome, difficult, and problematic as compared to smaller classes. The large classes have more students than available facilities can support, argues that teaching in such large classes is really a burden to teachers. They find it difficult to engage the student in learning, and learners can feel that it is hard to participate in classroom activities. It means that in a large class, both teacher and student can face challenge. Baker and Westrup describe the challenge encountered by the teacher and student in large English classes. The challenge are the difficulty of teacher in keeping everyone's attention, lack of student motivation in learning English, the difficulty of student in hearing the teacher explanation, lack of opportunity of teacher in helping weaker students. Attendance can be poor and irregular, leading to lack of continuity. Time consuming in taking the register, teacher can have too much marking to do and few research to make learning interesting. In teaching large classes, teachers should prepare some strategies to deal with various students with different abilities and personalities and provide them with the opportunity to achieve the learning objectives. Some researchers have conducted studies about English teacher strategies in managing large classes. Solis and Turner 2016 investigated teacher pedagogical strategies to create positive student-instructor interaction to counter students and instructors' challenges. They reported that several strategies like self-disclosure, caring, leadership, and making the class feel smaller have positive implication for the student learning performance. In addition, Becker and Westrup mentioned that the teacher strategies in managing large classes such as planning, classroom management, organization, group and pair work, teacher talk consists of balancing teacher and student talking time, giving clear instruction, reason for using the student first language in the classroom, using consistent language, questioning technique, managing classes with mixed abilities that are dealing with weak, average, and strong students. Correction and marking and self-evaluating these strategies are required for successful large class handling. In this study, we use a qualitative research design with a case study approach. Case study is one of the approaches used to investigate an issue that happens in one place. Explain that a case study is the study of an issue explored through one or more cases within the bounded system or multiple bounded system over time. Through detailed, in-depth data collection involving multiple sources of information. We use this approach because the major data collection were in the form of qualitative data to find out strategies of English teacher in managing a large class and perception of students on strategies used by their English teacher. Additionally, a qualitative case study was used in this study because the findings of this study might not be generalized to the other state Islamic junior high school or Madrasah Sanawiyah in Indonesia. In selecting the participant of this study, we use a purposeful sampling technique. We relied on our judgment in choosing the teacher and student to participate in this study. Purposeful sampling is the way researchers intentionally select individuals for study. This research uses a maximum variation sampling strategy to develop many perspectives and identify important common patterns. Research participants consisted of 4 English teachers and 10 students at one state Madrasah Sanawiyah in Palembang, Indonesia. Qualitative research does not need to have a large number of participants. The participants were selected because they were likely to generate useful data for this research. The English teachers were selected based on a set of characteristics. They had to possess a degree in English language education and have been teaching English for at least 5 years as an important attribute of teacher quality. The students were selected solely based on the teacher experience with their classes. We masked the participant real names and personal data to protect their identities, and we inform all participants regarding this issue. Thus, the names of all research participants were in initials. Interviews, observation with note taking, and document review were employed to collect the research data. Note taking during observation is necessary to support the data from interview. The strategies adapt from Becker and Westrup theory. Each indicator consists of several items with a total of 24 items to identify English teacher strategies in managing large classes. Direct observation were conducted in each classroom to get field evidence. Then each participant was interviewed to obtain information about teacher strategies in managing large classes and student perception toward those strategies. We applied one-on-one interview with open-ended questions. We record all interview by using a smartphone. We also reviewed several documents such as teacher lesson plans and course book for additional information. The data gained from the observation and interview were analyzed by using thematic analysis. The determined information about the English teacher strategies in managing large classes and student perception of the strategies used by their English teacher in managing large classes. First, we prepare, organize, and read the data from observation and interview. In this process, we read all transcription and coded the data related to this study's research question. Then, we use the coding process to generate a description from the data. We made themes from the code, interconnect the themes. Interconnecting themes when the researcher connect the themes to display a chronology or sequence of events when qualitative research generates a theoretical or conceptual model. Lastly, we made personal interpretation from the themes and codes as the final summary of this research concerning the research question. In this research, we used triangulation to validate the accuracy of our research finding gained from data collection. Triangulation is a corroborated evidence processed by different individuals. Subsequently, there are 6 techniques of triangulation such as investigator triangulation, combat level triangulation, methodological triangulation, theoretical triangulation, time triangulation, and space triangulation. We applied the technique of methodological triangulation in this study, in which we use a different method on the sum object study to obtain more comprehensive data and provide confirmation of findings. Thus, the data from observation were confirmed by the data from interview and vice versa. Finally, this data we combine to corroborate each other to enhance our understanding of English teacher strategies in managing large classes and student perception of their English teacher strategies. The themes on codes described in Table 1 above were explained as follows. Based on the data obtained from observation and interviews, we found that one of English teacher strategies in managing large classes was associated with the scheme of teacher's work. In this case, the teacher prepared lesson plans and course books before teaching to list the structure for a lesson. The data gained from the interview, the first English teacher, or ET1, said, "I prepare everything necessary before teaching." Meanwhile, ET2, ET3, and ET4 also shared similar answer. They explained that their lesson plans helped them teach as they provided the outline of the learning objectives and means to accomplish them with specific English classroom activities. They described that they prepared course books for teaching. They also used other sources of English language learning. For example, 82 state, "To complete my explanation, I used my course book and other sources such as other print materials, videos, and songs to aid the material which are not available in the textbook." ET1 and ET4 also support this by providing similar information. In organizing and controlling the classroom, the teacher set classroom rules, managed the student seating arrangement, moved around the classroom, and remembered students' name. All English teachers set their own classroom rules. For example, the students have to use a dictionary in learning unfamiliar words. One of the teacher named ET1 said, "Yes, I always ask my students to bring and use a dictionary to learn the correct spelling, pronunciation, and definition of the unfamiliar word." Moreover, ET2, ET3, and ET4 expect the same information. Besides, ET4 state, I will give punishment to the students when they have spelling errors if they do not bring dictionary, do not do their homework, or if they do not come to the class on time. The punishment will educate them as well as beneficial to students, such as they have to memorize some words or write learning reports. Meanwhile, ET1 also has a similar opinion. From observation, we found that some English teachers asked their students who did not bring the dictionary, and the students spontaneously left the dictionary up to show their teacher that they had the dictionary. For instance, the teacher assigned that the student who did not bring a dictionary to come forward and memorize some English word. Once they had finished the assignment well, the teacher gave them applause and appreciation for their efforts in learning. Also, they made students disciplined in classroom. They asked their students to be near and wear tidy school uniforms, come to class on time, not eat, chat, and disrupt other students during the lesson. Incorporating explanation and movement during the class was another strategy applied by the teacher in managing large classes. They assumed that their students who were at the back sitting position might not have attention. For example, one of teacher ET4 reflect that in large class, I always give attention to all of my students by moving around the classroom. Sometimes the students are talking to each other during the lesson, so it is important for me to move around to control my student. We asked them the purpose of moving around the classroom a teacher. We found that when the student made a noise during the lesson, teacher walked toward them and rearranged their seating arrangement to mention their learning engagement. We also found that English teacher attempt to remember their student name in checking student attendance by calling their names. Meanwhile, the teacher ET3 and ET4 also explained that calling student by their name could indicate respect and make the student feel recognized as individual in a large class. Managing classroom communication was also the strategy used by the English teacher in managing large classes. They use both English and Indonesian language to communicate with their students to avoid misunderstandings. We observed that when the teacher delivered the material in English, the students seem difficult to understand and they just stay silent. But when the teacher used Indonesian, most of the students show reaction and give response such as nodding their heads, giving comments, or asking questions. Managing talking time was also a means of communication management by the teacher during the lesson. Talking and questioning were viewed as key to helping the student learn and practice their English. One of the teacher ET3 told, I explained the material in front of the class to make my student understood the lesson easily. In addition, ET2 also argued that I have a target for students to make them speak in the classroom, so the talking time between teacher and student must be balanced, such as I encourage the student to speak about the lesson which has already been explained from the simple thing around them in the classroom. If I spend the whole lesson talking, my student will have less opportunity to learn and practice communication. Referring to the result of data analysis, we found that the majority of the students positively perceived that the strategies used by their English teacher in managing large classes. Terms and costs gained from the thematic analysis were described in Table 2. In the learning process, teachers use some strategies to make students understand and be interested in the lesson. For example, they use two languages in teaching, English and Indonesia. They used English at the beginning of the lesson to motivate the student to practice their English and active their background knowledge related to the materials to study. Then for further explanation, the teacher mostly talked in Indonesian. Most of the students claimed that they could understand the materials when the English teacher explained in two languages, English and Indonesia. For example, the student named CT claimed, I do not understand my teacher explanation when she or ET4 speak English too much. The relationship between students and teacher in the classroom was established with mutual respect. Students listened to the to the teacher and obey the classroom rules. Based on the result of interview, we found that the student could learn mutual respect of others from the rules of the class. Students are claimed that we have to obey the rules by our English teacher. For example, we may not come late to the class, have to bring our dictionary and be polite to the others. Another student described, when I come late to class, I may disrupt my teacher and friends, so it's better to come early. We found that the student felt comfortable learning English in the classroom. The data gained from the interview student named AA state, my English teacher or ET2 always move around the classroom and approach individual student, so I can easily ask her if I do not understand the lesson. The student with initial AR said similar thing. The student enjoyed learning English in several types of seating arrangement such as circle, semicircle, horses, shows, and group of 4 or 5. The student named Sitika argued that I enjoy learning English with my friends in a circle or semicircle seating arrangement as we can see each other talk and move easily during learning activities. In managing classes, the teacher conducted several classroom management strategies. All of the English teachers claimed that they used the lesson plan strategy to manage the large class. The teacher used this lesson plan as a guide in the determining when and how the lesson will be taught, as well as how learning will be evaluated. Lesson plans also enable teachers to manage large classes effectively with a detailed outline of teaching and learning activities during the class. The lesson plan is an important aspect that must do by the teacher. Also, good classroom management start with planning the course book and syllabus. In this research, most of the teachers prepare their course books and use other sorts of English learning such as other print materials, videos, and songs to aid the material in the textbook. Another strategy used by the English teacher in managing large classes was organizing and controlling the classroom. The action related to organizing classroom management strategy were remembering student names, moving around, stating classroom rules, and using the appropriate stating arrangement. According to Becker and Westrup, the best way to maintain control and discipline is to memorize and use student names. Emphasize that moving around the classroom enables the teacher to get closer to the students, allowing them to know their problems in learning English. Students to reduce physical and social distance among them. Besides, the seating arrangement is pivotal for classroom control and management, interaction, socialization, and ease of teaching. The seating arrangement should match the activity. Also explain that classroom rules are necessary to establish good disciplines. Managing classroom communication and talking time was done by the teacher in managing large classes. Classroom communication exercise for giving and receiving message through verbal and nonverbal language. Effective communication makes learning easier and strengthens the connection and interaction among people in the classroom. Therefore, the teacher used both English and Indonesian language to communicate with their students to provide clear instruction and avoid misunderstandings. Subsequently, managing the talking time was also the strategy used by the English teacher to make the talking time balanced. The English teacher explained the material simply and concisely and then asked several questions to the student respond. They also the student to ask questions about the lesson to ensure their understanding of the material. This was supported by Becker and Westrup. We report that the student need opportunities for speaking practice, and the best way to learn communicate to speak revisions. English teacher in managing large classes used several strategies. The strategies were planning the lessons, organizing and controlling the students, managing classroom communication and talking time, giving written and timely feedback on students' work. The majority of the students positively perceived towards the strategies used by their English teacher in managing large classes. They found that the strategies were helpful for them in learning English. This perception should be considered a determinant of student attitude toward learning and reflect teacher teaching practice in like classes. Although there is no best way to teach large classes, it might be good to review teacher strategies in this study to address the difficulty of teaching English in large class settings. Okay, thank you very much for your listening. And the last from me, wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.